Inflation in America may be even worse than thought. Consumer spending declines in May amid high inflation. GroupM forecasts ad spend growth, though less than last year's despite economic conditions. All that and more on Out of Home Insider Daily, the first audio tear sheet for media executives, business development people, and advertising enthusiasts alike. The concept of the tear sheet takes its roots in the world of finance from an old practice where stockbrokers at the S&P would tear a sheet out of their summary books to give investors a stock recommendation. While this show isn't about hot stocks or financial tips, it is meant to be a rundown of the news that's relevant to our business to offer some perspective for you to consider when processing it all. This show will not replace the Out of Home Insider guest spotlights that feature the best and brightest minds in and around out of home. You'd rather complement it as a part of your daily battle plan. Everything you hear about in this show will be linked in the show notes so that you can follow along, so you can follow up, or so that you can share with a colleague or client. Today's episode, Surviving the Recession. We're officially in a bear market, down 22% from market highs a year ago. From The Economist, consumer prices in May were 8.6% higher than a year earlier, the greatest increase since 1981, and new research suggests that comparing past and current levels of inflation in America may be misleading. Some analysts think that the Federal Reserve will be able to achieve a soft landing where tightening monetary policy brings down inflation without harming growth, something that has only pulled off once since 1945. They've since released that 0.75% increase to the rate. Paul Volcker, who presided over the Fed during the Great Inflation, tamed the beast only by pushing the economy into a deep recession. Historical statistics may be providing false comfort by suggesting that the Fed was fighting a much worse inflation problem than today. Recent study found that retail and food spending declined 0.3% in May compared to April in the U.S., according to figures released Wednesday by the U.S. Census Bureau. When spending at gas stations is excluded, overall spending dropped 0.7% nationwide last month. What that means is that when you remove the expense of putting gas in your car, the average American household is spending less money. The only reason that spending isn't down more is because gas is so expensive, having reached national record highs last week. Any indicators in the media of spending is up is really a false positive due to the price of gas. Please listen carefully. Consumer spending is slowing, and that is not a good sign. One possible impact on consumer spending is how inflation is outpacing wage growth. According to federal data, hourly wages are up 5.2%, with inflation being up 8.6%. That means if you got a 5-cent raise this year, it wouldn't matter because it's costing you 8 cents more just to survive this year over what it cost last year. Still don't believe me? From Adweek, this piece by GroupM. Despite perilous economic conditions and geopolitical turmoil like the war in Ukraine, GroupM thinks global ad spending will keep growing. Excluding political ad spending, GroupM's this year, next year global mid-year forecast expects 8.4% growth in global ad spend this year. The projection is just below its December estimate, which put growth at 9.7%. So what does all of this mean? Unlike in 2020, when brands pulled way back due to the uncertainty related to COVID lockdowns, it appears as though ad spend may slow, but shows no signs of stopping. Now, obviously, that's likely to vary between local and regional advertisers, big national brands, multinational corporations. Historically, ad spend has been 1.5% to 2.5% of GDP growth, which measures the overall growth of the economy. So you may be thinking, okay, how does that work in a recession? The reality is that despite an economy that is stalled or not growing, there are still categories and companies that are growing. So start to familiarize yourself with concepts like we're talking about today, and make sure to subscribe to stay in the know on this stuff. Once you find the categories and companies that are growing, or the ones that need to defend market share the most, think financial products, banks, insurance, things like that, it's important to understand how they likely come up with their ad budget. Most companies allocate 7 to 8% of their overall revenue to ad spend, with more growth-focused companies allocating 10 to 15% of revenue to ad spend. Let's take a company that does $100 million in revenue a year as an example. That means they're likely spending about $10 million a year on advertising. Then the question to ask is, of that $10 million, how much is being allocated to your channel? In the case of out of home, that's traditionally 5%. That's going to give you a really good direction to focus your prospecting as things start to tighten up, or to level set against competitors in your industry. In fact, there's a great piece the other day in Marketing Insider titled "The Supply Chain Crisis Broke the Marketing Rules, and You Should Too." In it, author Rich Bina outlines a very logical case saying most advertisers have a balance of retail advertising and brand advertising. And for most, the retail budget is significant and unassailable. Here's the gift of the crisis. It's time to reduce retail spend and increase investment in brand advertising. This is imperative. It's impossible to drive extra share or sales right now, but it is possible to set up for your market share and profit in the long term. Let's recap. Ad spend stays in line with GDP, so be tactical. Back into the numbers, back into your budget. What are the spend levels? Based on the spend level, which type of company should you be going after? Find categories that have to keep spending. There's great reasons to keep spending. Contracting is a sign of weakness and can signal to brands' competitors or to the market that they're pulling back. Gaining market share while your competitors conserve, that's a positive signal. Hold market share, invest in the recovery. Find more cost-efficient channels that offer similar targeting and measurement. Marketers test. Remember to test responsibly. Empathize. Tell a better story. Out-of-home is perfectly positioned. We've got deterministically behavioral targeted audiences that move from point A to point B. We've got hands down one of the most cost-efficient CPMs, and with directional measurement and GA and other measurement solutions, it's a really good idea. Idea of investing in long-term growth amidst an economic crisis can be hard, but building long-term demand and over the short-term, medium impact to your business is a really significant opportunity. So make sure to subscribe, follow, share this with somebody else who could benefit, and make sure to tune in tomorrow. We'll bring you more from the front lines.